Can y'all hear me now? Okay, there we go. All right, my bad, y'all. Sorry for some reason my mic didn't want to work. Uh, Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are y'all today? I hope y'all are having a great day. It is 84 degrees outside. It is 4:52 p.m. We have some breaking news. We have news coming out of Russia and Ukraine. We have news coming out of Iran. Let me get this up on the screen momentarily here. We have we have strikes going on in Iran. Um, 1 second. We also have here where pause that clip. We also have here where Tehran is actually launching a counterattack against U.S. bases, and also, my bad.
Says it launched strikes on U.S. assets in the Middle East, including an American base in Jordan. This follows U.S. retaliation for the downing of an Apache helicopter. Iran also targeting the U.S. Fifth Fleet in Bahrain. Video geolocated by CNN does appear to show a flash coming from the area of a U.S. naval facility there. Both Bahrain and Kuwait say they intercepted a number of Iranian strikes. The president told Fox News he's getting close to ordering new strikes on Iranian bridges and power plants because negotiations have been so slow. And before that, on social media, he wrote of Iran, now they will have to pay the price. This follows a range of back and forth attacks between the U.S. and Iran overnight. Iran saying it launched strikes on U.S. targets in the Middle East, including a base in Jordan and the Fifth Fleet in Bahrain. Iran state media says U.S. strikes hit 2 reservoirs, cutting off drinking water to 20,000 people. CENTCOM has not yet responded to that. I want to get right to CNN's Elena Treen live at the White House with the president talking in a much different way this morning than he has.
No, absolutely, John. This is quite a sharp turn from what we had heard from President Donald Trump not even 48 hours ago, when he had said early Tuesday morning that he believed a deal could be 2 to 3 days away. Now, of course, posting online that he believes that Iran has taken too long to negotiate a deal, which he said would have been great for them. Now they will have to pay the price. Those are the words from President Trump this morning. I should note as well, he also spoke with Fox News and he indicated that he was considering wider military action toward Iran, arguing that peace talks have continued to falter. Again, very different from what we've heard from the president. I note that over this entire ceasefire, which started back in April, the president at least 37 times has been trying to indicate that a deal is close. Now, of course, I think some questions around is this really is the president being sincere when he says this? Did these strikes, the exchange of fire that we saw between Washington and Tehran yesterday, the U.S. saying they were defensive in nature in response to that downing of an Apache helicopter on Monday, has this really changed the president's mind about where talks are and whether or not a deal is actually possible? Or of course, could this just be bluster from Trump trying to exert more leverage and pressure on the Iranians at a time when many officials, again, over the past couple of days have said they believed a framework deal was close. We have to wait and see. Now, I do want to share with you that when I spoke with a U.S. official yesterday about the U.S. retaliatory strikes in Iran, they had told me that really they were designed to be a warning shot. You heard from CENTCOM saying that the attacks would be proportional, and that they had came out and said yesterday that they were had finished. They had concluded after a series of those U.S. strikes and the exchange with Iran. A question, of course, though, is whether or not they have been contained enough that both the U.S. and the Iranians believe that diplomacy is still a viable option. Again, this is a very fragile time in the ceasefire, not just after these strikes, but after we saw over the weekend the fire exchange between Israel and Iran as well, really testing the willingness of all sides and their commitment to diplomacy. I will say we are hearing, though, some potential signs that diplomatic talks are still on the table. We know that there is a Qatari delegation right now in Tehran trying to bridge the gaps between these two sides. We'll have to see how this goes forward. But I think a big question, of course, is whether or not this is the president really trying to exert pressure at this time, or if he is sincere.
CNN's Fred Pleitgen is in Tehran with more on the unfolding situation there. We must note, as ever, CNN operates in Iran only with the permission of the government, but maintains full editorial control of our reporting. Here's Fred.
Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps say that they launched powerful retaliatory strikes at U.S. military bases in the Middle Eastern region. The Iranians say that they launched aerial attacks against bases in Jordan, Kuwait, as well as the headquarters of the Fifth Fleet in Bahrain, using drones but also powerful ballistic missiles. All this comes after the United States struck areas in the Persian Gulf. The Iranians are saying that that is a violation of their sovereignty, and they are also saying that it is a pretext that the U.S. is using. Now, all of this, of course, comes after a U.S. chopper was downed near the Strait of Hormuz. The United States saying that it was hit by an Iranian drone and that it holds Iran responsible for that. In the overnight hours, there were explosions that could be heard, according to sources, in places like Bandar Abbas, but also on an island near the Persian Gulf. The U.S. saying that it struck radar installations and surface-to-air missile batteries. But the Iranians are saying that a water desalination plant was also struck, knocking out drinking water in parts of that region. Now, of course, all of this comes as the situation in the Persian Gulf, and specifically in the Strait of Hormuz, remains extremely volatile, with the U.S. and Iran trading blows in that area over the past couple of days. But also, as Iran and the United States are still trying to find a way to reach a memorandum of understanding that would end the hostilities between the two countries and then pave the way for broader peace negotiations. Fred Pleitgen, CNN, Tehran.
Joining me right now is CNN political and global affairs commentator Sabrina Singh and CNN global affairs analyst Kim Dozier. Guys, thanks for being here. Sabrina, let's start with this new warning from the president. What do you make of this social media posting now?
Well, what's interesting about the social media post is when CENTCOM launched the retaliatory strikes from the Apache that was shot down, they said it was proportional in nature. Now, this Truth Social post this morning could really change that. But I think the paradox here is that both sides do not want to go back to a full-scale war. So what you're seeing is Iran strike again, and the U.S., they're trading barbs back and forth. How long can this go on and continue? We don't know. But clearly, the president is signaling today that he might be willing to engage in more kinetic action.
Yeah, I think the question is he saying what we've done now shows they're good, that's the price they've paid, or there's something now about to come?
That's right, and we don't know. Yeah. We don't have more information.
Yeah. Kim, what do you think of this and what this could now mean?
Come on there, it's time.
Let me show you around. This is the ship hangar. Every vessel ready to...
I think it could be another rhetorical flair from Trump that is just a typical example of what has stymied the negotiations. According to the New York Times and other outlets, they are making progress behind closed doors on everything from nuclear enrichment to and suspending that for several years, to allowing intrusive inspections of Iranian sites. But the moment you have Trump either make a threat or reveal some of this progress in public and then often take it further. Yeah, we don't want them to agree to 10 years. We want them to agree to 20 years without enrichment. And saying that publicly, that always makes progress behind closed doors that much more difficult, because then the Iranians feel like they have to publicly make a riposte to that just out of pride.
And let's talk about the back and forth retaliation here, Kim. Iran now says 20,000 Iranians have lost access to drinking water after 2 reservoirs were struck. Iran blames this on the United States. CNN has reached out to Central Command for comment on the strikes, but Trump has threatened to hit water treatment plants in Iran. He started saying that back in April. That faced backlash then because civilian infrastructure sites like water plants are banned as targets by international law. If that's what the United States is now doing, and that's an if, CENTCOM has not responded yet, what do you make of that?
Well, under U.S. military law, you can strike this kind of a target according to proportionality, according to, did this particular water reservoir or these 2 reservoirs mostly feed into military facilities? In that case, you could make a legal argument that they were okay to strike. But what we're hearing from Iran is these fed large civilian districts, and you have many Iranian military sites next to or co-located with civilian areas. So it is hard for me to understand why this was okay. Why not hit one of their drone factories or part of the military arm that's allowing them to continue with the war fighting? Because it takes.
Now, see, this is the kind of propaganda that you don't want to hear. This is the kind of stuff that gets our troops in bad morale. Like, yes, things could be handled a little bit different in Iran. But in behind closed doors, there's only a few people that knows exactly what's going on. So, in all aspects, only the people that's there is going to know what's going on. And what I mean by that is the people that is actually doing the delegation. Or in doing the diplomacy, should I say. I don't know. You take that with a grain of sand, but we have other news as well. We are going to be getting to that momentarily as well. That is just now popping up on your screen. And we are off.
And this comes after Russia was forced to withdraw forces due to the pre-existing logistics collapse. We can also report that Ukraine just carried out a series of major strikes on oil pumping stations serving the capital city of Moscow, and they also hit the largest oil refinery in the Samara region of Russia. We also have wild footage of the aftermath of a flamingo missile attack on Russia's main military electronics plant in Cheboksary, which is truly mind-boggling to see the scale of the damage from just one of those infamous missiles. And finally, we also have news that U.S. officials have stated that they will strike Iranian territory again today, and Iran will quote-unquote pay the price for tapping the talks along to stall negotiations. And as a bonus, U.S. forces also struck a ship with a hellfire near Oman, apparently today. So we have a hell of a lot of news coming out. We have big news coming out of Ukraine. We have big news coming out of the Middle East. But our biggest news is coming out of Ukraine. So let's jump right into our major story, which goes to War Monitor. And I would say it's fair to say this is our biggest story of the day by far. We are currently getting word that Ukrainian forces have successfully targeted the Chonhar Bridge and the Henichesk Bridge leading east out of Crimea, forcing many Russian logistical columns to take a massive 2-hour detour to move logistics up towards the southern front line. So as you can see right here in this really good graphic created by War Monitor, there is a massive situation happening for the Russians, which is not good for them whatsoever. We've seen that apparently the Henichesk and Chonhar Bridge, which is 2 of the 3 exit routes out of Crimea into Ukrainian Ukrainian territory have been hit, and right now they are closed as of right this minute. So that leaves the Russians with one route over here in green, but you might notice though that involves a 2-hour detour to go all the way around that green route towards Dnipro and then all the way over to Melitopol to bring supplies to these frontline forces inside of Ukrainian territory for the Russians. So that 2-hour detour is very bad for the Russians for many reasons. Number one, it gives the Ukrainians 2 extra hours to be able to hit those forces as they're moving down the highway in Ukrainian territory to be able to hit them and take them out before they can even get to the frontline soldiers in Russian occupied territory. So that's one major problem. Also, number two, the extra 2 hours having to take, that is a very long time when it comes to frontline logistics. That could be the difference between a unit, running out of ammo or a unit potentially being able to push back the Ukrainians or not. So that's a big deal. A 2-hour detour in the midst of a logistics situation, that is a significant situation to say the least. And right now we are expecting that Ukraine probably will end up hitting that detour route in addition to the 2 bridges that were also hit apparently this morning and also yesterday. So this is getting very bad for the Russians. But we also have some more detail, and moving into our next post here, this one is going to go to Max 26, and we actually have satellite images that we can actually show you of one of the exit routes that we just saw on that map. This is in fact the Chandar Bridge that was apparently hit a couple of days ago, and apparently Ukraine hit it again, I think yesterday or like 24 hours ago they hit it again. So we saw that the Russians had tried to set up a pontoon ferry over this destroyed bridge right here, but it looks like Ukraine is taking out the pontoon ferry in addition to the bridge itself. So Ukraine's taking everything out. The Russians try to bring in temporary solutions, and Ukraine simply hits it again. So pretty much everything the Russians are doing to fix this problem is failing to a large degree, which is detrimental for their frontline logistics to say the least. But let's take a look at this.
Imagine being able to build anything just by thinking about it.
The bridge is totally intact. You can see the 2 roadways right there, totally intact. But moving forward just a little bit, there is the satellite image of after the attack, and you can see literally the middle of the Chandar Bridge is completely destroyed. You can see it right there with that big part in the bridge right there. It has been hit definitely by Ukrainian strikes. So that was one of the exit routes, and we saw also the Henichesk Bridge was also taken out just like that. Sadly, I don't have a satellite video to show you of that, but it is the same thing, of course. So right now the detour is the only way to take, and that's a 2-hour highway of death detour to say the least. But moving into our next one here, this one also goes to Max 26. And like I told you, that 2-hour detour is only going to lead to bad things for the Russians. As you can see right here, the new buffer zone is being created, and the buffer zone happens to look a little bit fiery, as you might be able to tell right here. Here's a bunch of Russian vehicles right here, as you can see, burned up on the side of the highway. Also moving forward some more, there is apparently a fuel tank burnt to the ground, as you can see right there. And I think we have another image here of another vehicle burned off in the ditch off to the side over there. So you can see that there's already basically a highway of death being created on a new route this time, and the Ukrainians aren't letting anything go through. They're not letting a single thing go through. Now granted, they aren't striking at civilians, but we've heard some reports that maybe they could be using civilians to try to transport fuel, but that's of course up for debate right now. But and speaking of that though, let's go ahead and move into our next post. We have something else to cover. We kind of touched on this on the stream a little bit last night, but just to go over this once again, we have seen that as a result of these logistics attacks that Ukraine's conducting, which are very serious to say the least, the Russian military command is now reportedly withdrawing forces from the Kinburn and Spit in the Mykolaiv Oblast, which like I said, we did kind of cover last night, but just to go over it one more time. And apparently Ukraine's intermediate range strike campaign against the supply lines is rendering defenses in the area increasingly untenable, according to analysts. And as you can see right here, this is apparently a picture of the Kinburn Spit. The Russian forces were here before, and now they have had to leave because they weren't able to get food, they weren't able to get supplies or ammo or anything, thanks to Ukraine hitting all the supply trucks. So that's quite embarrassing to say the least, and I would expect we will probably see more withdrawals coming in the near future. But moving into our next post here, you might wonder what's happening in Crimea right now, because we've of course seen these massive gas shortages. We've apparently seen that people are starting to ride horses quite a lot around the area as they're waiting in line for gas. Apparently some people have decided to go back to the medieval ages. We're seeing that eco-friendly transports are appearing, as they call them, and apparently this is what they're doing now. But not everybody knows how to ride a horse though, that's the problem. So some people are used to mechanical horses, known as a car, but some people are used to, I guess, the real horse itself. But let's take a look at the video and see the horse around Crimea. So right there you can see there's the horse. Also, by the way, they got in the middle of the road. Look at this. Look at this. Russian stupidity right here. The horse and the guy almost just got ran over by that car right there. They're literally playing around the middle of an active roadway right now. And also, I'm sure the Russians are very heated, to say the least. They're probably not willing to stop and have patience right now as they're out of gas. But as you can see, though, more Russian stupidity. But let's finish the video real quick. There goes the dude right there. He honestly doesn't seem like he knows how to ride a horse really either. That thing's kind of out of control. But as you can see, though, stupidity in Crimea, as you can see, I think the Russians are sort of on the verge of wanting to leave at this point. But as you can see, they really can't leave either because now they're out of gas. So what a situation and a half. And also some more of that famous stupidity in the streets. But moving on to our next one here. This one goes to SITREP. And like I mentioned, we are seeing some reports coming out. And we also kind of covered this on the stream a little bit last night. But we got some more detail about it today. Allegedly, the Russian civilians, or Russian forces actually, are now using civilian vehicles to transport gasoline in plastic containers to some of the frontline forces. But this is not entirely corroborated, so take it with a grain of salt. But here's what we know so far. You can see right here in the image that there's apparently some plastic containers in the back of these two civilian vehicles. And once again, this is alleged to be the Russian forces transporting it in a sneaky way, which of course, you can't use a civilian vehicle for military transport, by the way. I think that might happen to be a war crime. But as you can see, though, allegedly they're using this right here. Some people did say, or they're also saying as well, that apparently this could be a black market for fuel, but I think it might be the Russian forces doing this. That seems to be what the Ukrainians think about it. And, you know, so far the Ukrainians have been right about most stuff. So we'll just have to see how that pans out. But that could be how the Russians are trying to get around the situation, and simply using civilian vehicles to transport fuel. So that way they don't get hit by the Ukrainian drones. But I think Ukraine's wising up to that, by the way. But moving into our next one here, this one goes to Anton Gerashenko. We've also seen that apparently last night, Ukraine struck the Cheboksary oil refinery in Russia's Samara region, which is one of the largest oil facilities in the entire region. And we got some more big hits coming up after this, by the way, but let's take a look at this video first. Apparently Samara oil refinery right here was struck, and it was hit on literally dead on. No defenses around it or anything. So let's take a look. Oh boy. The sirens are going off, but it's a little bit too late though. Looks like it's already on fire. As you can see, that's the refinery. Oh. Listen to that. Listen to that dystopian guy on the radio back there. Let me go ahead and mute that. I think music came on. There's some dystopian guy on the radio back there. It sounded like that Chernobyl miniseries when they're telling people to evacuate from the radiation danger. But as you can see, though, right here, that refinery took a direct hit. Also, here's an upside-down house right there. I guess that's where where some of the Russians live, maybe. Look at this, the upside-down house right there in the middle of the parking lot, actually. I guess that's an attraction of some sort. But the real attraction is that huge fire back there at the refinery right now. I mean, that's a hell of an attraction and a half back there. So what a big hit there. But we've got even more footage, folks, and even more worse damage than that Ukraine conducted. We have heard that Ukrainian long-range drones have gone all the way up toward Moscow to strike two crucial oil pumping stations in the Vladimir region of Russia, also sort of near the Moscow region, and apparently the two pumping stations were part of a pipeline network supplying the Russian capital of Moscow with refined oil products. So as you can see right here, they are definitely on fire. You can see the NASA firm satellite picked up the fire signature, the heat signature, right there at the location of both those pumping stations. And there's an image up there in the top left showing you it on fire right there. So the big deal is this is supplying Moscow with oil and fuel. And we had heard before that near Tver, which is sort of outside of Moscow, they were already having fuel shortages. And most of the refineries around central Moscow, which is where Russia is, or excuse me, where Moscow is, that is also where a whole bunch of oil refineries have been shut down temporarily due to these Ukrainian attacks. But moving into our next one here, this one's going to go to Exile Nova, and y'all might have remembered that last night we showed a video of a flamingo missile flying past a Russian's window, and if you're curious what that is, that's a cruise missile is what that is. It's not an animal, that's a cruise missile, and it happens to be almost as large as a U.S. Tomahawk missile, which is very potent to say the least. We saw it fly right past somebody's apartment, and we found out today what it hit. But before we get into the damage report, which is wild, stick around for that, let's take a look at the video and see the flamingo flying into the target.
I'm 52 years old. Last month, I caught my wife.
Whoa. As you can tell right there, let me mute this real quick. Let me go back. There is the flamingo right there in the first couple of shots going past their window. I'm going to sort of slow it down here. You see it going past. It looks like a school bus going past. That thing is massive. It's moving slow and it's heavy. So that was a flamingo, by the way, a very potent cruise missile carrying a massive warhead on it. I think it's over 1,000 kilograms, if I'm not mistaken, but don't quote me on that. Well, let's see what it hit, though, because it was just one flamingo. That's all Ukraine fired. It was just one flamingo missile at a Russian target. And here is what it hit. Look at that. That is crazy. So the hit in Cheboksary inside of Russia that hit the military electronics plant, this damage that you're looking at was caused by just one flamingo missile. It literally defaced the entire building, as you can tell right here, and collapsed several floors of it. That is a hell of a missile right there. You don't want that hitting your building for sure. Here's a picture of the before, and also let me go back and get you a picture of the after right here. So as you can see, you really don't want to mess with a flamingo. That's a very potent missile that Ukraine fields right there, and this would have taken several drones to cause this type of damage, but it only takes one flamingo to do this. So that school bus sized missile you just saw fly past the Russians' window, it literally went right here. That's where it went, at the Cheboksary military electronics plant. So absolutely nuts, by the way. But moving into our next post here, this one's going to go to Clash Report, and let's move on to our Iran news for a second, because obviously we have some big Ukraine news we just went over, but let's go over what's happening with Iran, because we have some big statements coming out today from the U.S. government, and apparently, according to Clash Report, that the U.S. president said that they're going to hit Iran hard again today. And just a reminder, I'm sure everybody knows this, but yesterday, the U.S. struck the Iranian coastline after Iran shot down a U.S. Apache helicopter near the Strait of Hormuz. They're saying that a Iranian Shahed drone took down the Apache, but a lot of people are questioning that because that sounds a little bit unbelievable. Some people think that an Iranian missile took down the Apache, but we don't really know the truth right now. But apparently, the U.S. is going for more quote-unquote self-defense strikes as of today, if you believe the U.S. officials. We'll have to, of course, see if that turns out to be true or not, because these days, sometimes they say stuff and they really don't mean it. We'll just have to see. But moving into our next one here, this one goes to FITEX News. And it does appear that the U.S. president has put out a Truth Social post as of this morning, and it looks like he is starting to get fed up with the stalling that Iran is starting to do, or not really that they've started to do, they've been doing it. But here's what the U.S. president said all the way through. He said, Iran's military is a complete and total mess, and much of it, like their Navy and Air Force, doesn't even exist anymore, and they've been completely defeated, according to the U.S. president. Of course, we have stuff to sort of go against that, but he said, Iran is all talk and no action. The bully of the Middle East is dead, and they've taken too long to negotiate a deal that would have been great for them, and now they will have to pay the price, according to the U.S. president. So this is what's being said right now, and once again, we're not sure if maybe this is a pressure tactic or he actually means that. Well, we also heard, of course, a statement earlier that he said he was going to strike Iran again today. So we'll just have to see how that pans out, but it sounds like he's starting to maybe get toward the end of his patience, maybe. We just don't know. But moving into our next post here, this one goes to World Source News. We've also heard a new report from Iran as well. Apparently, during those strikes that the U.S. conducted on Iran yesterday, Iran is now claiming, and I want to put a big emphasis on claiming, by the way, because, Iran does lie. So we're hearing that allegedly around 20,000 Iranians have lost access to drinking water after 2 reservoirs were reportedly struck in U.S. strikes. But once again, they put out a video allegedly showing the site, which I can't show here, unfortunately. It's copyrighted and stuff like that. But allegedly, the U.S. hit the water access. But we had heard the U.S. say that they were going to strike critical infrastructure eventually. I'm not sure if maybe this is a warning shot or if the Iranians are lying. Of course, these days it's kind of hard to tell who's telling the truth anymore. So we just have to leave that up for debate as well. But moving on to our next one here, this one goes to Ocean Defender. We've also seen that in the midst of all that, CENTCOM has announced that U.S. forces have disabled an 8th ship in support of the U.S. naval blockade of Iran last night, apparently firing on a Palau-flagged tanker near the Gulf of Oman. And the U.S. CENTCOM is saying the vessel refused to follow U.S. directives, so it looks like they hit it with a hellfire right in the engine room. So let's take a look at the video and see the hellfire hitting at the rear of the vessel. And then after this, we also have another angle from a different vessel that's actually near the area, also filming the aftermath of it. So let's take a look at our first one from CENTCOM. And right there you can see the ship, and it's about to come in just a second. And you can see there it was. A laser guided it right into the engine room right there. Also, by the way, that's a big missile hitting that ship, so I wonder if there were casualties on it. But as you can see, though, all the smoke coming up from it, they definitely hit the engine room, to say the least. We also saw that there was a report that went out to the Maritime Association, apparently, or one of those organizations, saying that there was a fire on a ship in the engine room near the Gulf of Oman, and this was apparently the vessel that was on fire. So some people had said that maybe it was Iran that had attacked it, but it was actually the U.S. that did it. That's what this was right here in the video. But moving into our next one here, we also have another post from World Source News, and we have a video allegedly showing the ship on fire after the hellfire strike, way off from the distance here. So this is a pretty unusual view of it. So let's take a look at this video. And there it is out there in the distance right there. You can see there's the ship on fire out there, apparently near the Gulf of Oman. It's being filmed from, I guess, maybe a nearby ship or something. I'm hearing a radio going off in the background, so maybe that's like possibly a Coast Guard ship or something. I'm not really sure what this is, but as you can see, though, there it is from another angle, and that was the U.S. hit right there with the hellfire. Does pretty big damage, I will say. Hellfires are serious. But moving on to our next post here, this one's going to go to Egypt's Intel Observer, and we've also seen that Iran claims to have downed another MQ-9 U.S. surveillance drone over their skies, and I wouldn't put this past them, by the way. You know, of course, Iran does like to use propaganda, but we've seen about $1 billion at least worth of these drones get shot down over the course of this conflict between the U.S. and Iran, and it looks like we have a video here apparently showing that once again. So these MQ-9s are basically being used like they're disposable at this point. They're not exactly cheap, they're not exactly super expensive, but they're still, you know, money down the drain basically. So let's take a look at the video, because apparently over the past 2 weeks alone, we've seen several of these get shot down. So let's take a look. So right there you can see this appears to be a view from an Iranian targeting system right here, and that does appear to be an MQ-9 silhouette right there if this is a legitimate video. But there it is flying along right here, just sort of going through the skies, conducting surveillance as usual. Pretty routine operation, by the way, when it comes to U.S. surveillance ops like this. But it's flying along. It's just sort of like, you know, tapping along right here, I guess you could say, depending on who you ask. But in a minute here, it's about to get hit by an Iranian projectile. You're about to see it here in just a second. I'm not timing this very well, but as you can see, though, it's about to come up here in a minute, and let me go ahead and fast forward it because it's not happening. Apparently it's near the end of the video, and there it was. Let's back it up for a second. Here it is right here. So there goes the projectile. I sadly can't tell you what projectile that is that hit it, unfortunately, but there goes apparently the drone falling down. So it appears to be a legit video just on first glance of it. So like I said, it's not too hard to believe. But moving into our next one here, we also have another wild story that's been happening today, and this one goes to BBC News. Because everybody keeps saying, oh, no more wars, sir, no more wars. But this one is actually not the fault of the United States, actually. But we have seen that the infamous Pakistan-Afghanistan war apparently has reignited as of about a few hours ago, and when Pakistan launched airstrikes into Afghanistan, reigniting tensions. Now, I will say this, because I know we probably have some Pakistani viewers watching. I think Pakistan's alleging that the Afghan forces or something have launched some sort of like skirmishes on the border or something like that. I don't have the full story. We'll have the full story by stream time tonight, by the way, because of course it's always very complicated to sort of suss out what's happening with Pakistan and Afghanistan. But that war is basically restarting as we're seeing right now, and I can't confirm that as of today. That we'll likely see this situation probably run out of control yet again. And just to keep in mind, by the way, Pakistan is currently trying to mediate the Iran situation with the United States. So now it looks like Pakistan is having their own problem breaking back out again that we're seeing right here. But with that, folks, that is actually our last post of the video. So before you leave, if you enjoyed the video,
and I hope y'all enjoyed the short war video. We'll be back on air probably tonight at 10:30 Eastern Standard Time, depending on my dog situation. She's been doing okay. She's been eating and drinking, so that's a plus. And but they had to wire her bottom jaw shut, or not shut, but closed, with a wire to hold the bone together. It's awful. It's awful. And shame on the person who hit her and took off like that. Well, that's all we have for right now. We'll see y'all later on tonight. God bless all y'all, and thank y'all for those who actually stopped in and enjoyed the show. Make sure y'all like and subscribe or follow, depending on what platform.